It started with the sound of thunder, not from the sky, but from an engine that hadn't breathed in 100 years. The billionaire's guests froze mid-sip as the old machine roared to life, smoke curling, metal trembling, history awakening. And standing beside it was the man everyone had mocked only hours earlier, a black mechanic they'd thrown off the estate like trash. The billionaire's face went pale, because that engine wasn't just any relic. It was the first car his great-grandfather ever built, and somehow the man he'd insulted had just resurrected it. But how did a man with grease-stained hands end up rewriting the legacy of a dynasty? Stay right here, because what happened before that moment will make your blood boil and your heart race. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell, because this story proves why you should never underestimate someone who works with their hands. And trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Darius Cole was known around his small Georgia town as the man who could fix anything: engines, hearts, and broken pride. He'd worked 16 years at Westbrook Motors, a shop inherited from his late father. But business was drying up until the invitation came. Westbrook Estate Restoration Project. A billionaire wanted help reviving antique cars for an auction. The pay? Enough to save his shop. Darius arrived early. Boots clean, overalls pressed, toolbox gleaming. But the moment the guard saw his skin, the tone changed. Deliveries go around back. "I'm not here to deliver," Darius said softly. "I'm the mechanic." The guard's laughter echoed across marble columns. "Not today, you ain't." Minutes later, Alexander Westbrook, the billionaire himself, strode out. Tall, cold, wrapped in privilege, like an expensive coat. "I don't recall hiring freelancers," he sneered. Darius handed him the signed contract. Alexander barely glanced at it. "I don't let strangers touch my family's history," he said, "and certainly not amateurs from Main Street garages." He turned to the staff. "Escort him out." The gate closed behind Darius with the hiss of betrayal. That night, rain battered the tin roof of his shop. He stared at the photo of his father, grease-covered, smiling beside a rusty pickup. "Son," his father used to say, "engines don't care who you are. They only answer to those who listen." Darius whispered, "Then I'll make them listen." The next morning he returned, uninvited. The estate buzzed with reporters. Alexander was showing off his century collection. But in the center of the garage sat the pride of the family, a 1912 Westbrook Steamliner. The engine was silent, seized like stone. Alexander barked at his engineers. "You said it'd run today." "The press is here." One mechanic muttered, "Sir, the system's too old. We don't have the specs." And that's when a voice cut through the chaos. "You do now." Everyone turned. Darius stood at the gate, holding a faded notebook. His father's. "You again?" Alexander scoffed. "You wanted the Steamliner running by noon." "I can do it," Darius said. "Impossible." "Then you've got nothing to lose letting me try." Murmurs spread among the guests. Some whispered, some filmed. Alexander smirked. "Fine. You've got 1 hour. Fail and you'll never step foot here again." Darius rolled up his sleeves. His hands moved like prayer. Precise, patient, remembering. He opened valves forgotten by time, whispered to the pistons as if they could hear. The billionaire checked his watch. 40 minutes left. Oil dripped, steam hissed, and the scent of metal filled the air. Then, clang! A bolt snapped. The crowd gasped. Darius froze, sweat trickling. For a moment, even he doubted himself. But then he remembered his father's words. "Engines don't care who you are, only how you treat them." He improvised, used his belt buckle to patch the joint, tightened the pressure valve by feel alone. When he turned the lever again, the engine coughed. Once, twice, then roared like thunder reborn. People screamed, applauded, filmed. But Alexander, he didn't clap. He walked slowly toward Darius, eyes narrowed. "Who taught you to do that?" he asked. "My father," Darius replied. "He used to fix your father's cars, back when you still lived on the south side before the money came." The billionaire's jaw tightened. Something flickered. Shame, memory, fear. but he masked it with arrogance. That notebook, where did you get it? Darius looked him dead in the eye. It belonged to your grandfather. The crowd fell silent. Alexander snatched the notebook, flipping through sketches dated 1911. There, in fading ink, was a signature: Elijah Westbrook and Samuel Cole. My father's father worked with Darius said quietly. They built that engine together. Until your family erased his name from history, gas rippled through the room. A reporter whispered, "Is that true?" Alexander's face went white. This changes nothing. But everyone could see the truth. The black mechanic he'd insulted was the descendant of the co-creator of the Westbrook legacy. Alexander tried to regain control. You broke in, tampered with property. I could have you arrested. Darius wiped his hands on a rag, calm as still water. Go ahead. But the world already saw who built your fortune. Phones were still recording. Journalists were already posting. Alexander turned to his PR manager. Shut this down, she whispered, trembling. Sir, it's live. 500,000 views already. And that's when the engine sputtered again, then burst into a perfect, steady purr, drowning out his rage. Darius stepped back, eyes glistening. My father never asked for credit, just respect. Looks like neither of us will forget that again. The crowd erupted. Some clapped. Others stared at Alexander, waiting for his reaction. He said nothing. He couldn't. That night, the story went viral. Headlines read, Billionaire humbled by black mechanic's historic discovery. Investors started asking questions, and Alexander Westbrook's empire began to shake, because the secret inside that old engine was bigger than anyone realized. See, buried beneath the rust was more than machinery. It was a patent that could rewrite who owned the Westbrook name. But that is where things only begin. The morning after the scandal, Alexander Westbrook didn't wake to birdsong. He woke to silence, the kind of silence that meant fear. His name was everywhere. Billionaire exposed for erasing black co-inventor. Stock prices down. Investors pulling out. And that video, the one where the black mechanic made his great-grandfather's engine roar again, had hit 12 million views overnight. Meanwhile, across town, Darius Cole sat alone in his shop, staring at the same notebook that had changed everything. He wasn't smiling, because deep down he knew this wasn't victory. Not yet. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled up in front of his garage. The driver stepped out. Mr. Westbrook wants to see you, Darius sighed. Tell him I'm busy. The man replied quietly, he's not asking. When Darius arrived at the mansion, cameras were gone, replaced by lawyers. Alexander stood by the Steamliner, his expression hollow. I didn't come to fight, Darius said, but I'm not letting my father's name die again. Alexander took a deep breath. You don't understand what that notebook means. If the partnership was real, it changes ownership of the entire Westbrook brand. Then maybe it's time the world knows the truth, Darius said. The billionaire's attorney placed a document on the table. Sign this non-disclosure agreement. You'll receive $10 million in full credit as a consultant for your contribution. The family name stays intact. Darius stared at the paper. $10 million. Enough to rebuild his father's shop 10 times over. But something inside him clenched. He remembered the humiliation at the gate, the laughter, his father's hands, scarred from decades of work, never once recognized. Darius stood slowly. You can't buy what your grandfather already promised my family. My father didn't build for money. He built for legacy, Alexander's voice cracked. Part anger, part fear. You'll destroy generations of my family's work. Darius looked him dead in the eye. Your family built wealth. Mine built the engines that made it move. And then he walked away. By the next week, #ColeLegacy trended worldwide. A historian confirmed the signature match. Elijah Westbrook and Samuel Cole, co-engineers, 1911. The media called it the greatest historical correction in automotive history. Every outlet wanted Darius on camera, but he stayed quiet, rebuilding his father's old garage. Then one morning he received an envelope, stamped with the Westbrook Foundation seal. Inside, an invitation. Join us at the Westbrook Museum this Saturday. There's something you should see. The museum glistened with chandeliers and whispered curiosity. Reporters filled the halls. Alexander Westbrook stood at the podium, hands trembling. "Today," he began, voice low, "we correct a century of silence." Behind him, a curtain lifted, revealing a bronze plaque mounted on the restored Steamliner. It read, "Created by Elijah Westbrook and Samuel Cole, pioneers of American engineering." Gasps filled the room. Darius stood frozen as Alexander turned toward him. "For years, I carried a legacy built on pride. But pride without truth is a machine without fuel. Mr. Cole, your family deserves to stand beside mine, not behind it." Darius walked forward, his eyes glassy. The applause rose like thunder, the kind that shakes the soul, not the sky. He placed his hand on the plaque. "For every black craftsman, builder, and dreamer erased from history," he said quietly, "this one's for you." Alexander extended his hand. "The Westbrook Cole Foundation will fund scholarships for black engineers nationwide." "I hope that's a start." Darius shook his hand, firm, calm. "Start by remembering their names." Outside, cameras flashed. But this time it wasn't about humiliation. It was about recognition. The moment truth took its rightful place in history. Weeks later, the Steamliner sat proudly in the museum. Children pressed their hands against the glass, marveling at the name Samuel Cole. At his shop, Darius hung the original notebook on the wall, the pages still smudged with oil, love, and legacy. He looked up at a photo of his father and whispered, "We finally made it, Pops." And for the first time in decades, he smiled. Not because the world saw him, but because he finally saw himself. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a courtroom, it comes with courage. And when truth is written in grease and grit, no dynasty can erase it. Because some engines don't just run on fuel, they run on faith. Faith that one day, what's hidden in the dark will roar again in the light. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes hard work still matters. Because here at Black Chronicles, every story reminds us, greatness doesn't wear a suit. Sometimes it wears overalls.